Hello.
Yeah, that's your name.
Squirrels got me.
Big Jim.
Yeah.
Really cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
That's good that you think that of it, because that's what deer hunting typically is cold and fun.
Yesterday morning, I'm glassing up on the pass, and I see these deer moving, and I'm like, ooh, there's some deer moving. All of a sudden, I just see this person just head down, just hauling ass, wearing shorts and a t-shirt with a pack on. And I'm like, is that Tard? My dad always talks about floating through the woods like the autumn breeze.
So Robert's
when you're
the
275 pounds, I don't know how you do that, but
the Freightliner. It's just like a creeper. You're just kind of up in the corner watching what's going on down there.
Yeah.
You know.
He's like,
he's up there slapping it, pissing all over everything.
Is it warm yet?
How did you know the name of the actor?
That's right. I know.
How did you say his name?
Hervé Villechaize.
You know what pertnear means.
If you know what pertnear means and you live in America, you're a redneck too.
Welcome to the Log Talk Podcast, brought to you by Pertnear Outdoors. Hey everyone, Billy here, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Log Talk Podcast with Pertnear Outdoors. Thanks again for joining us. And this week, you got a conversation coming to you with a local guy here in Sheldon, Nick Scott. Nick is a neighbor, essentially a neighbor of mine where I personally live, but also a neighbor to the hunting property that I have with my in-laws. And so Nick and I have gotten to be friends over the last handful of years as I've been part of the family, and we've gotten to be closer with social media and with the ability to network and have just have hunting in common has been a platform for Nick and I to talk on. And recently he has started his own social media page and starting to film some of his hunts and whatnot under the channel name of Engraved Outdoors. So Nick is he's doing some good stuff. He's a good kid, active in the community, volunteer work, volunteer firefighter, and all around just a good guy. So I think you'll enjoy the conversation he and I have around hunting, and he gets into talking a little bit about his past fall hunting season where he went out to Montana with his family on a mule deer hunt, and also we got talking about a buck that we're all after around the block where we hunt, and coyote hunting as well, which is something he does quite a bit of during the winter, and something I don't have a whole lot of experience with, but it sounds pretty interesting about what they do. So kind of a rundown on what we talk about on today's episode, and a little bit of housekeeping before we get into that. Starting this week on Monday the 13th, head on over to, I guess, wherever you're listening to your chapter, your BHA chapter's Instagram page. We're running a struttin' and cluckin' virtual calling competition is what it is, and it's actually a nationwide competition, but we're kind of doing it just like you would a March Madness. So we have a bracket. Each person will be in a head-to-head matchup in the first round. So each state has got 8 callers to start, and then it works all the way down to a state winner. And then from a state winner you go into regional competitions, and then from regional competitions you go into a national competition. So we've got Jimbo, our own Pertnear Outdoors pro staffer and team member Jimmy. He is going to be one of the contestants, as well as Adam Fisher, who's one of our friends and hunting buddies. So Adam will also be competing, but there's a great group of guys from New York that will be putting their calling to the test. Actually, if you're listening to this when it comes out, they'll be up on the Instagram page today. So keep your eyes peeled for that. It's going to be one of those deals where it's a one-on-one, and what you need to do is you vote for who's best. At the end of the day on Monday, those folks will move on to the next round in the state competitions and so on and so forth. So keep your eyes peeled on all of your state BHA pages Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of this week, and then the following week will be the same for regionals, and then the last week of April will be the national competition. So keep your eyes peeled on your local chapter's channel, and some fun with that, and some cool prizes for everyone to have a chance to win there. Last week I talked about a little bit of a challenge that was going around Cash for Conservation Challenge. So that's something that was brought forth. I talked about it last week. I had a post on our Instagram channel trying to kind of raise awareness and also kind of get people engaged with their local conservation organizations, whatever that might be that you're interested in, and help out this time of year. Well, not this time of year. What we're going through right now with everything being shut down, a lot of banquets, a lot of events, a lot of fundraising activities that normally are going on are not. So it's definitely a tough time for those organizations that do a lot in our backyards and do a lot for the animals and for the ground that we enjoy, and definitely important to make an effort to do a little bit extra there. So myself, I've bought some extra raffle tickets for a raffle that NWTF is doing around it for our chapter for New York, and so I'm doing that. I also joined up QDMA. I've never been a member of QDMA, so I bought a membership to start getting involved a little bit with them and learn a little bit more about their program. And I'm trying to think of what else I did. I did something else, but I can't remember. But gonna try to do a little bit more of that. I'd like to get a couple more memberships to. I'm a RMEF member. I'm an NWTF member, and now a QDMA member, as well as BHA. So those four are organizations that align pretty well with me, but definitely a couple other ones on the docket that I'm going to be taking a look at, and we'll report back if I decide to jump on board with any of those other organizations. So if you are doing anything and you want to kind of bring a little bit of awareness to it on social media, if you want to put it in your story or post it on your page and tag us and hashtag cash and the number 4 and then conservation, we'll definitely share that along just to show what you're up to and what you're doing to help out in these times. So thank you everybody for what they're doing with that. I guess lastly, had another good week last week finding sheds. I found a couple more, so I am continuing to stay on a roll and putting a lot of time on the ground, but it's showing to be fruitful. So found a nice 8-point side up at some public property that I've been trying to get to know a little bit better down in the Honeoye Lake area. So I'm pretty excited about that. And then I also, while I was on that walk last Monday, ended up jumping up a group of bears. I'm assuming it was a sow and 3 cubs, but there was 4 bears total, and came across to where they were feeding. And I think I kind of came down above them, and they didn't smell me or anything. And I think I just popped over the top, and boom, there they were. So I was about 100 yards away, and heard everything start smashing and crashing, and was expecting to see some tails flashing, and that was not the case. It was just a big blur of black, and it was pretty crazy because as they kept running, they never stopped. Like a deer a lot of times will stop and look back, and the bears did not. They were getting out of town pretty quick, but it was interesting how they stayed very close and very tight in a line, and they did not hesitate at all. They got right out of there. So it was cool to see that. And then I got down to about where they must have been, and there's a lot of oak, and they were just, that whole area was tore up. It was all matted down in spots where you could see that they were laying, and found some fresh piles of bear scat too. So that was a pretty cool experience. And I was talking with Dad today, Sunday, and he was up at our camp yesterday, and he saw some fresh bear tracks in the snow. We had that snow that came through Thursday and Friday, and Dad saw some fresh tracks up at camp on top of the hill. So the bears are out. They are wandering around, and they're hungry. So it's definitely cool, and it's always fun to see them out and about. So that is all I've got as far as breaking stuff down and getting you ready for this episode. I appreciate you following along. If you could make sure you follow us on your podcast channels. Give us a rating if you could, and tell your friends. Trying to continue to grow this thing. We've had a great couple months in a row here, and we want to continue the momentum moving forward. So share it with your friends if you like what we're doing. Let's keep this puppy going in the right direction. So thanks, and have a great week. Feed them. Holy hell, I'm ready to roll.
All right, sounds good, man.
Nick Scott, what's cooking?
Not much, man. Keep them quarantined.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think of my little basement manhole here?
Looks pretty good.
I
Just
mean,
got my hunting room all fixed up here with this time off that I had. So
I know. Yeah, it's actually, I don't know, I like getting together and doing these podcasts in person, but honestly, I've done, I think 3 or 4 now during this time when you kind of been forced to either just do it over the phone or do the video side. And I've done the video side each time, and it's actually pretty nice because you can be so much more flexible and trying to figure out, it's like, okay, I'm going to run down to the basement and we'll record one real quick instead of trying to pack all this stuff up and go somewhere or have somebody come over here. So I don't know. I guess there's the good with the bad of it. It is nice to sit down face to face, but
yeah, no, for sure.
so how's this?
Actually, bro,
Sorry, go ahead.
what's up?
No, you go.
I was just gonna say I brought split brows in here and stuff so I could show you on the mountain that I got.
Oh, beautiful.
And the shit from that 10-pointer. I want to bring them over and show you one of these days. But
Yeah, you can stand out by the road and show me. Oh wow. Damn, he looks good mounted up, man. Oh, he's gonna be a giant.
I shit my freaking pants when I found him laying side by side 2 feet apart.
Holy shit, he's big.
He's so much bigger than I thought he was. He's got 7-inch bases. This G2 on his right side is 10.25 inches long.
There's 7-inch
one,
bases?
Yeah, his bases are 7 inches.
All right, so just to paint a picture for everybody who's listening and obviously not watching this, Nick found the sheds to a buck that we've been Nick he's the neighbor to my in-laws. His family owns property neighboring that, and he found the sheds to a buck we call Split Brow, who's an 8-point with a split on his left brow. What do you figure him roughly? Because you figured him out without the spread, obviously. What'd you figure he measured?
Yeah, the standard for sheds, what you give him when you get scored, and I gave him. I mean, I'm sure he's closer to like 17 inches, but I gave him a 15-inch spread, and with a 15-inch spread, he went right around 135, 136 as a typical 8 with a split.
Yeah, he's a fantastic buck. So that's one of the things we wanted to get into today to chat about that deer, because that deer's becoming he's becoming one of those bucks that everybody's pretty familiar with in our block that we hunt, and starting to get quite a bit of intel on him. I feel like everybody's starting to kind of put their own little pieces together on where he's at, and it's going to be a race to see who can try to throw a projectile at him come October 1.
Yeah, see who can beat him at his game first. Pretty much.
I got my money on one of them Kirsch boys.
I'll tell you what, between Bobby and Brian, them two are just ridiculous.
Yeah, Dallas is on a mission this year. I'll tell you what, he's been spending a fair amount of time out at the farm, scouting and looking and trying to put up some different stand spots, and so I got my money on Dallas this year. I think Dallas is gonna. He usually waits until like the last weekend of season, like muzzleloader, and he'll like come out of nowhere and just slam a buck that nobody even knew was around. Like, oh yeah, look what I just shot. It's like, what the? Yeah. We haven't seen that. We haven't seen that deer in 3 months, Dallas. What the hell?
Yeah, he did that to me a couple of years ago. Big 9-pointer. Actually, I was getting dressed one day and I forgot about a party I had to go to, and I was going to go sit a stand. And I went up to the party. I said it was kind of an off wind, but that's why I wanted to hunt it, was because it was an off wind, but in a way where it could be good. And I did not hunt that stand. And the next day I had a perfect wind. I went into that stand and set up, and I had a camera 20 yards away. And that buck in daylight with an hour left was standing 20 yards while I was at that party. And Dallas killed him, like I think it was one of the last days of gun season, across the road up in the swamp.
Yep.
So.
God, old Dallas. But he's done that. He's done that 3 or 4 times now, where he'll shoot a good buck right there the last week of season. It'll be like the last 2 days of muzzleloader. It'll be a Monday or Tuesday of muzzleloader. He'll get it done, and I give him a lot of credit because he's got his hands full with he works nights and he's got the 3 girls, and he doesn't push that at home. He gets out when he can, but he saves his time. He knows that he's got a couple good spots that if he plays it right, the deer are going to be there late season if we don't pressure him too much. And time and time again, he makes it work.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think that's good with, with our little situation is, we don't put a ton of pressure on the deer. We kind of all understand that, there's spots we really don't go during season, and, nobody's, you get the Orange Army in New York and everybody drives out every block on the first day. And with us kind of up in there, nobody really drives that out. I know I got between the 2 or 3 properties that I hunt in that corner, I got 2, 3, 4 spots that I just, unless it's very, very last day or shed season, I never go into them.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's a big piece of why we're starting to see these, multiple year interactions with some of these deer. I've been hunting with the Kirsches for 6, 7 years. I don't even know what it is. Since 2012, I've been hunting with them, and it just seems like we're getting more consistency. They were always getting big bucks on the ground, but the quantity and the consistency in which we're seeing them seems to be more and more, and I think a lot of it is that. I think there's a lot less, just complete pushing of blocks. Everybody just, no boundaries and just going as far as they want. I think that makes a huge difference, just in the way that the deer behave for that entire 3-month season.
Yeah, no, I mean, we got all the neighboring properties that I know. We got a couple neighbors to the south of the farms that we hunt, and they hunt pretty hard, and I know guys that push that blocks out. And I guess in my eyes, when I see the places that I got for these deer where they won't be pressured by me at all, unless you get a trespasser or something, to them guys down south, go ahead and push them because it's probably going to put them right up in our wheelhouse for sure.
100%, man. Well, we kind of got ahead of ourselves a little bit just to introduce you, who you are, and why we're having this conversation. So Nick Scott is a local Sheldon boy here, Sheldon, New York. Nick started his own Instagram page and Facebook page, Engraved Outdoors. So I want to kind of get into a little bit of that and why you started that page. But, I guess more or less just introduce yourself. And we've started to become friends over the last few years, just being locals. You live a mile down the road from my house, same road. So we kind of built a little bit of a relationship, and as we kind of move forward here and start communicating more and more, it is fun because there's just more intel to share, and it becomes more of a community type thing around our area. We live in a very, a very country place. So there's not a ton of people. So you kind of get to know everybody, and you get to, create this community around us where everybody's, kind of looking out for each other, and also kind of, we're all sharing our goals and our missions. I think it's important as we kind of move forward in what we're trying to get, like deer like the split brow, if we're all kind of talking about it and aware of it, we have a better chance somebody getting that deer on the ground if we're all kind of talking that way and working together towards a common goal, even though we're on different properties and have our own way of going about things. So what's up, Nick? I know we've already started talking, but how you doing, buddy?
Good. Yeah, my name's Nick Scott. I started Engraved Outdoors. Basically, I just want to share my experiences. There's some things that us as hunters, you and me both, we get to see things a lot of people don't get to see. And I'm actually going to dabble in a little bit of video and editing and trying to put videos out. About myself, I'm 24 years old. Like I said, I live about a mile down the road from you. I am a volunteer firefighter. I've been in there for almost 10 years. This will be my 9th year. I've been lieutenant. I've been a captain, truck captain. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to sharing my experience. I've been hunting for going on 12 years now, and I've been pretty lucky. I've, not every year I kill a nice buck, but about every other year I get a chance at a good one. I killed last year. I killed a 135 9-pointer. There's a crazy story behind that deer, but we all had pictures of that deer too, which is kind of neat how we're talking about this because I know you know about that deer just as well as I do, and all the other deer the couple 8-pointers that were killed over on the Kirsch farm there. I knew about them deer. I've seen them. I have hundreds of pictures of them. So it's kind of neat that we're able to do this, and I know we kind of joked around a little bit about make hunting great again. So it'd be kind of cool if we could get together and make, this whole end of that block thing like what we're going to do. It would be awesome to do it and make it as good as we can possibly get it for, New York. I know
Absolutely.
there's a lot of people that say New York hunting's tough, but, don't ever let anybody tell you there's not big bucks in New York. You just got to be on the ground looking for them.
Yeah. Yeah,
So.
100%, man. And I just posted this week's episode of the podcast was with John Teeter and with Whitetail Landscapes, and the conversation I had with him had me thinking a lot about our situation here in Sheldon, and just we have these kind of block timber, a ton of ag land, and you kind of know there's not a ton of people with hunting access to these different farms. So now we've got we have the ability as a community to kind of all be aware of what everyone's trying to achieve, and respect your neighbors and what everybody's doing. And it becomes one of those things where if you get everybody on the same page, you could each year you could have right now, like you showed the 10-point shed when you're holding up the split brow. I don't know that deer. I mean, did that deer, his rack seem like he's a 3.5-year-old, or do you think he's a 2.5-year-old?
I think he's 2.5. He is palmated by the G2 a little bit. He's a nice deer, but I think he is 2.5. His bases don't quite tell me he's 3. I don't have very many pictures of that deer. I know you got him, and that's the only reason I knew about him.
Yeah.
I've never seen that deer before.
Yeah, we were getting a ton of pictures. We were getting a ton of pictures of that buck all season. And there was another buck that you didn't find his sheds. We haven't found his sheds. We were calling him. I don't know. He had a weak left side, so it was calling like weak lefty or whatever. But he was a nice 8-point, but his left side was just a little bit shorter than his right side. And though that buck, so the lefty, the split brow, and the 10-point were hanging together just about the whole winter. And it was funny because once they started dropping horns, it becomes so hard to tell who's who, and whether it's just a good group of does or if it, unless you got a trail cam picture right up in personal, it's hard to tell. None of those bucks are super identifiable, no like body marks or anything like that. But yeah, that 10-point and then the split brow were hanging together religiously, and then every once in a while you'd see that weak left with them too. But that's 3 mature bucks that that I think you thinking that split brow is 3.5. I'm thinking he is.
Yeah, I would say he's probably 3.5. I don't think he's quite 4. He's got good mass, but he should be one heck of a deer come next year. Yeah. I'm excited to see what he blows up into.
I know. Yeah, we're gonna get pictures of him. I had pictures of him last spring in May during turkey season and closer to the beginning of June. Like he was already last year basically the end of May. He was already out to his ears, didn't have much for tines yet, but you could see the split on his brow tine already. He had the brow tines going. So I'll be very interested to see where he's at that time this year, if we can get pictures of him. And, the deer are hanging super heavy, and we're spending a ton of time over there right now because we've got, so much time on our hands. Everybody's over there kind of riding four-wheelers around and planting trees, and the farmers that bought the property from my in-laws that are they're doing a bunch of changes of the property and taking out some hedgerows and stuff like that. So definitely it's definitely a lot of activity over there, but I'm getting trail cam pictures on my cell cam every morning, and doesn't seem to be affecting their travel patterns at all. So I think they're hanging tight there.
Yeah, I think they got enough area there that it should hold them no problem. There's enough there's enough thick areas in there that I don't think it'd really affect them too much. I know like even the farm work and stuff, that really don't affect the deer too much. Taking the hedgerows out that's getting come out right now, that might do a little something, but I think it's far enough away from the woods that it shouldn't hurt too much. But I've hunted it. Bob this year was cutting corn or combining corn behind my grandma's, and I sat right in the field just over the hill from him, And I had one of my best nights. I seen like 4 different bucks. I seen probably 6 or 7 does. And believe it or not, none of them were coming out of corn. They were all going into the corn as he was combining it.
Interesting.
So it was kind of funny. I expect to see deer, maybe bedded up in there running out of there. But every deer that I saw was coming out of the brush and going into the corn while he was combining it. So kind of interesting to see that,
For sure.
how farming really doesn't affect the deer too much if there's a tractor in the field.
Yeah, I don't think it bothers them. I think, and if anything, I think it's a good thing that we're in there on the 4-wheelers and kicking around and doing stuff right now, and we always do it during the summer. I think it's a good thing around the farm to have that constant activity. They get used to you, and it doesn't bother them too much to have somebody driving a 4-wheeler around or running a tractor. I don't think it doesn't phase them. It shows time and time again.
Yeah, as long as you don't get into their zone, you got really no worries. I don't think. I walk my dog every once in a while over there where I hunt a lot. I don't go too far back up in, but he doesn't go far. He stays pretty close. But I'll walk my dog, and 2 days later, I've had split brows on camera over the summer, and it don't really bother him as long as you're not going in there and bumping him every single time. Not to say he'll get used to it, but as long as you're not bumping him, I think you're all right. It doesn't really affect him too much.
No, I agree. So you had a pretty good spring shed hunting. I mean, I guess we're not done with that yet, but you've had a pretty good amount of success finding sheds. So I'm just curious to you, like, what were some of the spots where you were finding sheds? I'm just interested in not so much like the physical spot, like where, but well, I guess yes, the physical spot. Like, were you in thick cover? Were you in open hardwoods, in farm fields, on the edges of fields? Where were you having success finding your sheds?
Yeah, so split brows where I found his sheds. I was only in the woods 15 minutes. I wasn't even really looking for them yet. I just happened to get really lucky and walk up on top of them. My plan was to come in. There was a big thicket that me and you both kind of agreed on that we think he's bedding in, just to the way of the movements of the trail cameras and patterns of which way he's coming from. So I was planning on starting at the top of that, and then I was going to zigzag my way down through it, and it's nasty in there. And I've looked in there 2 or 3 times now. I have not found a shed in there. Surprisingly enough, I have been finding my sheds on edges. Now, when I say edges, I'm not saying like a field edge or nothing like that, but just edges in the woods. And that's kind of my style hunting. I hunt edges in the woods, and where I found his sheds were right on the edge, and deer edge animals. And so I kind of worked the edge. I was going to swing around, but I decided to stay to the edge and work the edge of it. And it's the edge of open hardwoods to where it starts to get thick into the thick cover. And I found his sheds laying right on the edge. As soon as where the trail comes out, as soon as it hits the open hardwoods, that's where both of his sheds were laying. I found a couple up behind my house. Those were also in the open. And I found actually all my sheds this year in the open. I either on hedgerows or open hardwoods near a thicket, maybe 20, 30, 40 yards off the edge of the thicket, but near where I knew the deer were going to. There's several nights I'd have 25 deer come from behind my house. They crossed the road, and I'd watch them get almost smack my cars almost every. It was like a show. And where they were coming from, I knew they were coming from, but they worked a certain hillside to get down there. The trail showed it, and
dude, that herd of deer had to be that had to be a whole block worth of deer. It was incredible. And did you ever see any bucks in that group physically, or because I never saw any bucks, I would just see all does in that group coming down off the hill.
Yeah, every once in a while I would see a buck. Last year they do the same. I've been in this house 3 years, and every year they do the same thing. Now last year I had a great big 10-pointer. I had a bunch of video across the road. He actually got killed this year. He scored 146.
Who shot him?
The farmer down the road from me here, the little ranch house that sits up on the hill
Oh yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. He shot it right behind his house, right?
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
I
He
heard-
shot that
okay.
one right behind the house. I got all kinds of pictures and video of that deer through the spot and scope. I watched him all summer. It was cool. I watched him for a couple summers. And then the farmer's youngest kid, his daughter, she got her first deer this year, and I have a very short video clip of this deer. He's got double split G2s, and he's massive. I would have to say he's high 140s, if not 150. And that's her first deer ever. It's an incredible deer.
Yeah, it looks like that buck looks like a muley. It's a pretty awesome deer. And
Crazy. So I
think the story I'd heard, she had seen that deer quite a bit during the summer working on the tractor because she works on the farm there, and and she went out. I think it was opening day, night, because they do quite a bit of driving. I think that group does, and she just went out and was sitting by a tree that night, and the freaking buck came by and she throttled it. I think that's what I had heard. Is that the story you'd heard?
Kind of. So what I had heard from her and her dad there, Earl, is that she was in a different area hunting, and she was sitting by a tree and just kind of hanging out after the drives that day. And her mom called her and said, "Hey, there's a couple deer down in the bottom by the creek bottom on the lower end of the field." So she just kind of moseyed down there. I guess she sat down for 15, 20 minutes, and all of a sudden she's seen a couple does, and then she's seen him coming behind and one shot and knocked him down. And I think she's going to have trouble beating that one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a heck of a deer.
Oh yeah, yeah. Pat had sent pictures of that deer to Pat Mest had sent pictures of that deer to Danny and I. It would have been like right around like November 5th, November 6th, somewhere right in there. He had pictures of him down there. I think either up back by the cabin or down in the bottom. But anyway, he had pictures of that deer, and he was swollen up, like his neck was huge. He was full rut, and that deer looked like a freaking giant. Like his hair was all bristled up. He must have just gotten up, and he just looked nasty. And it was like, holy shit, look at the size of that thing. And then for like a week or so later, for her to put the smackdown on that deer, that was pretty awesome. But yeah, I mean, talk about some great deer shot down this little valley here in this really this 10 or 15 square mile radius. There was just some giant deer shot last year. Yeah, no, there was. It was a good deer. I didn't have very good deer until I went to Montana for some mule deer. I had one shooter come in opening day, way too dark. I'd stayed in the stand until way after dark to make sure he was out of there. I saw a couple more and had a couple encounters, but no real good. I could tag out on a little one, but I'd like to try to beat them big boys at their game. And it's fun to do it, but I never really had no opportunities here in New York, so I went to Montana, I guess. Yeah. So that was one of the things I wanted to get into with you was some of your experience going out west to Montana, and then also you do a bunch of coyote hunting, which I have zero experience with the style of coyote hunting that you do, so I kind of want to dig into that a little bit. So why don't we chat about Montana and what that experience has been like for you, and just kind of get into that conversation. Montana was great. They treated us fantastic. We shot 5 deer, 3 days. We were there for 4. But it was awesome. We got connections through. My grandpa's been going out west for years and years and years and years. He's got a trophy room that most people could only dream about. And so when they went out the year before, they got connections with a rancher who owns, I think it was about 12,000 acres out there. And it's eastern Montana, so it's all, sage prairie, rolling hills, no big mountainous or anything like that. There is some pretty good little bluffs that drop off into some good little canyons, 700-800 feet down. And actually that's where I killed my deer, which was pretty much the hardest place that you could ever get a deer out of. That's where he died. So it was fun. We were right near the Powder River in Broadus, Montana.
And I'll tell you what, if you ever want to go on a whitetail hunt, that Powder River, that thing is unbelievable.
Did you see a lot of whitetails?
Oh my God! You come back to New York and it makes you, or you go anywhere after the Powder River and it makes you feel like the worst hunter in the world. I'm not kidding you when I say every single field had anywhere from 80 to 100 deer in it. I mean, that's probably an understatement on it. I mean, the deer out there are just, we stopped in one field and I think we counted 10 bucks over 140 inches.
Wow.
That's just ridiculous. And there was some public land around there where we were hunting mule deer, but God, you just drive by that Powder River and you see all them whitetails. So there was definitely a lot of game to look at. We did see some elk down there, but we've seen a lot of whitetails, and the Montana tag is good for whitetails and muleys. So we could have shot either one if we could have found a whitetail on some public land. But all the whitetails are down in the creek bottoms. If there's a creek bottom with big old cottonwood trees, you're going to find a ton of whitetails. Where we were was probably 40 minutes. Slow drive because they're all, rocky county roads, and
Right.
We did see one whitetail up there, but it was all muleys, and there was no shortage of them. We drive around, and luckily he had a lot of trails through his property from being a rancher and going trekking on cows, and so it was nice. We had a place to stay right at his house. It was, I believe, $100 a day to hunt, and I think it was $150 you could split between 6 people to stay right at the ranch. So, by the time you split it between the 4 people that were there, it was about $140-ish, a night to stay there and hunt, which was fantastic. You didn't have to make the 40-minute drive every morning out of town.
Yeah, it's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, you could, if you saw a buck right out the window of the ranch, as long as he was on the fence, you could shoot. When we did, a lot of times we would just go out. We would just walk out the door of the ranch house, walk up behind his house, and actually up behind his house is where we seen what I think is he was a long ways away. I spotted him through a spotting scope with a bunch of does. I would figure he'd go about 170-ish with a quick glance of him skyline before he dropped over into the bluffs. He was a giant deer. That was one of the first big deer that we seen there. So we kind of, after a day or so of, looking at deer and whatnot, kind of figured, that was probably the only really, really big one in the area. They're plains deer, so they're not the big giant mountain deer that you're going to get if you would go towards like Ashland National Forest. Those are some big old deer up there. So we our goal on this trip was, potentially was my grandpa's last trip. He's got Parkinson's real bad. And so it was potentially his last trip, and I needed to be there. I've been on a couple out west trips with him before, so my entire goal of this was not to shoot the biggest buck I could find, but for me to get a buck, for him to get a buck, and the other guy, Mike, to get a buck that was with us. I wanted us all to get a decent, respectable deer, and I was willing to throw him on my back and do whatever I had to get him one. The first day that we were there is actually the day I shot my deer. My grandpa, Fran, he had spotted him probably about a half mile away, and he called me over there, and I would go frequently over there to check on him, and I grabbed him by arm, I tried to pick him up, said, let's go, you're going to go kill this deer, I don't care if I get anything or not, I wanted him to kill one, and he told me, he goes, you go, I want you to kill this deer, and I could just tell, you look in somebody's eyes, he wants me to go, so I was like, all right, well, I took off, and we had at least 5 days, and the amount of deer we were seeing, I knew it probably wouldn't be a problem to get him one. So I took off, and I went solo, and I used the land. It was in the big bluffs. We were sitting in them bluffs because of that big buck that I'd seen that morning drop off into them. We never did locate him, but we found this buck that I went after, and I covered half a mile pretty quick, and when I come up over the bluff that I thought he was going to be in, I looked for probably 15 minutes, and I could see all the drainages that were coming down. I could not see this deer, and I was getting a little worried because it was starting to get, sun was going down, and I still hadn't located this deer, and he had a half-mile head start on me. So eventually, I got enough cell service. My grandpa called me, and he says, "You got to move to your right. You got to move to your right." And I knew I had to go to my right, so what I did, but with the wind the way it was, there's no way if he was right over that bluff, he'd have got me before I even knew he got me. So I had to stick down to the left in hopes he stuck to the right and he wouldn't get my wind. Well, Grandpa called me and told me that, and I started sneaking up this little ridge, kind of skylined, but I was hoping if there was like a little depression. These deer can hide so good in that stuff. If there's a 3-foot berm in the sand, I mean, they're gone. They totally disappeared. And as I was making my way up that ridge, all of a sudden, this buck jumps out of this little berm that looked like 100 million cows laid in. And he jumped up out of his berm, and he was 20 yards away from me. I had no clue he was even in the world. And so as he jumps up, he takes off, and he goes right down in the deepest canyon. And so I laid down with my gun, and I was whistling, hollering. I was screaming at this deer to try to get him stopped. Finally, he stopped at I think it was about 240, and I shot, and I could see him hunch right up, and he took off up the drainage, but I stayed right where I was at because any drainage, if he tried to come out of there, I had it covered. It was going to be a farther shot, but I knew I had one in him anyway, so I was willing to try something far. And after about 5 minutes, I never seen him come out of that. And so I kind of waited about 5 minutes, and then I moved up a little bit, and I could actually see the deer standing at about 340 yards as he walked down through. And he was standing there, and I shot again, and he dropped in his tracks right there. So, and then, when I got down there, it was pretty much dark. So I didn't have no cell service, so my grandpa had, pretty much no idea if I killed him or not. I was over half a mile away from him. And are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Oh, I'm just deep in the story, man.
So my grandpa had no idea if I killed him or not. I run off the edge to get down there as fast as I could to, figure out if he did drop right there. I was pretty sure he did. But I got down there and I could see him laying there. He's nice, big, 24-inch wide, 3x3. He actually had a little velvet still on him, and he was broke up pretty bad. He would have been probably a 3x4, but he broke off the split on his right side. And there was I got down there and I was looking around with my headlamp, and there's coyote tracks all over the place. And I was by myself. My grandpa has no idea where I'm at. I can't get a hold of him. Jesus. So my only option was I needed to gut the deer right where he was at, and then my plan was I was going to grab the deer and drag him about 400 yards down this little canyon. And this deer are huge.
Yeah,
and
it's not a whitetail.
These deer are monsters. So what I did is I gutted deer right there, so hopefully the coyotes had something to eat on and not my deer overnight. And it was supposed to be real cold. It was supposed to snow the next day, so I really wasn't worried about it leaving them overnight other than the coyotes. So what I did was I gutted the deer out with the headlamp, drug him down 400 yards down this canyon to a better spot that I figured we could get out with packs. And then I took off all my inner stinky layers from, running a half a mile to catch up to this deer, and I put my backpack, my spot and scope, everything that stunk as much like human as I could possibly put on this deer, and I put it on the deer, and I hiked my way up out of there in hopes that the coyote would smell, all the human scent of the deer and not bother it. And, I got a bunch of pictures, and everybody was all happy at camp. And next day we went down there, and bright early, first thing in the morning, and he was untouched.
That was a good idea to leave all your stuff there. Did you hear that somebody else say that somewhere, or did you just think of that on the spot?
I kind of thought of it on the spot because I know a lot of times when we're hunting coyotes around here, you know, if they smell you, you know, if your dogs are running a coyote and he smells you, you know, they're gone. So my instinct went to, okay, well, I'm a coyote hunter, so, you know, if I'm going to keep a coyote out of here, what am I going to do? And that I stripped right down, took my inner layers off, laid it right over the deer, and I figured that was going to be enough for probably one day. And after one day, I figured that probably wasn't going to be enough to keep them away. But it worked for the night, and we went down there, and it was cold that morning. It was like 12 degrees with like a 40-mile-an-hour wind. It was freezing. And so we went down there, and we actually started a little fire, keep our hands warm. And we went and started deboning the deer right there, put them in some game bags, and the two guys I was with, my grandpa, and it was my grandpa's buddy, so, you know, they're older, they're in their 60s, so I took the whole deer, and I put the whole deer on my back, and I had them carry out the stuff that I had left behind overnight. And but it was cool, you know. I mean, you got this campfire going, and you're deboning a deer, your first mule deer ever down the canyon. You got my grandpa, who means everything to me, right there helping me stoke the fire and cut this stupid deer up. And it was awesome. It was something I'll never forget. And after we got done deboning the deer and stuff, you know, I was cutting slivers of meat off the cavity anywhere I could find and putting them on a stick and cooking them over the fire. And I'll tell you what, I never had deer meat taste so good in my life. That was so cool.
Yeah, there's something about that.
There's no way I couldn't do it. Oh,
whether
whether
it's a mental thing or whether it really is that good, I think part of it is just mental. It's just such a primal thing to do when you're in the middle of nowhere and you're eating meat. Like that's a couple of the meals that we've had up in the mountains after, you know, when we shot the mule deer, and then this year with the elk, like it was just, there's nothing better. Like, but I think it's just that you're so locked in on it. There's no other distractions. There's nothing else going on. You're just sitting there around a campfire with the guys eating freshly killed meat. Like, there's just nothing better. So that's pretty cool. And I'll tell you what, right now, that's probably one of the, that's the best Pert Near pro tip ever, is take your clothes off if you got to leave a deer overnight. And for whatever the reason might be, I guess in a lot of situations, I'm thinking like whitetail situations around here where we shoot something and you end up leaving it overnight. Well, it's because you're not quite sure what the shot was. It's very rarely is it, well, because I can't get it out of here tonight, I got to come back tomorrow. But it just, you know, maybe even last blood you had, you know, maybe you watch the deer bed down and you're trying to leave it be overnight, you know, take a bunch of your clothes off and leave them there, or leave any of your gear like that. That's a great idea, dude. I'm not surprised that worked, because like you said, you just left all that scent there, and anything that was, you know, that might be after that, if they're smelling you, they're gonna probably be aware a little bit.
Yeah, and you know, that's what I thought about. You know, I was down there by myself. You know, I didn't have my pack right with me. So, you know, there was no chance that I was coming back that night. I knew where the deer was, and I gutted them out. I gave the coyotes something to eat, and they did. It was gone the next morning when we went down there, and I figured I need to come up with something to keep the coyotes off the deer for just one night. And so I took the stinkiest, sweatiest layers I could off, and, you know, I laid $100 stick of, you know, flannel down on there. Or not flannel, but thermal down on there on this stupid deer overnight. Got snowed on and everything, but it worked. I figured it would, and I figured it only worked for about one day, and so it was enough. But yeah, I mean, around here, if we're leaving a deer overnight, it's because we can't find the deer. You know, most of the places around here we can drive forward. They're fairly close enough to them to get them out of there, or, you know, we got enough buddies to help you drag them out, take turns.
I'm just thinking, and it's super. I'm just trying to think about how you could do that in a whitetail situation, but, you know, because you wouldn't necessarily want to because you'd have to think the coyote's going to approach the deer from a downwind side, because they're going to smell the deer from that way, and they're going to want to come in from downwind. So if there was any way that you could get downwind to that deer, you know, let's say, I mean, it happens, and we've talked about it on this podcast, like you gut shoot a deer and you got to let it lay overnight, or you one lung it. if you can play that wind right and get downwind of that deer and leave a few things that are full of scent, it's worth a shot. If you're in one of those situations where you know where the deer is, but you need to let it be because you can't shoot it and you got to let it lay overnight, it's worth a shot. I mean, I think I don't know. I'm all excited about that because we've run into that so many times where you lose meat or you lose a deer because the coyotes get into it, and that's so unfortunate and it's so frustrating. So just a little thing like that to think about could be a game changer there.
Yeah, absolutely. Coyotes have they got a good sniffer on them. If they're going to smell you, there's a good chance, I've had deer get smacked in front of my mom's house before, and I'll throw the deer on the back of the four-wheeler and take them up back, and I'll throw a trail camera on it just to, out of curiosity. And it's funny because just that little bit of human scent, if a coyote checks on it, the first time he checks on it, he won't even eat it. He'll sniff the whole thing. If he has any whiff of human odor, he won't come back for a week, most cases.
Yeah.
So it's funny that, it works. I know it does, and that's why I thought of it, because of, the deer that I've taken out back and had them, sniff and just walk away, and it takes them a week to even come back. Fox around here are a little different. They really don't care. They're a little bit more bold. So, yeah. But at least the fox won't eat as much as a couple of coyotes will. So.
Right. What? So how did your grandpa's deer go down? Did he end up shoot? What day was that he shot his buck?
So it was the same day that the same morning that we packed my deer out. We packed my deer out and got him back to the ranch house, and I told my grandpa, I says, we're here to hunt. I'm not going to sit around. There's no service out there. There's no phone. There's no, we got electric. That's it. I mean, there's no TV. There's no nothing. So at nighttime, you just got nothing to do but sit around and bullshit. So I said, I'll cut this deer up tonight when we come back and got nothing better to do. And I said, we need to get out there and I want to find you a deer. And so we were driving around and we had found a deer, and he was right off the road. And my grandpa was going to shoot him, and he kind of held off. And so we kept going, and we went back up into an area that we hadn't been yet. I shot my first deer on the first day, so there's a lot of area we hadn't seen. And where we went to, we spotted a few does, and we got right to the end of the line, and right at the end of the property, we ended up spotting a real good mule deer up on a knoll. And it was going to be a long stalk, but I told my grandpa, I says, let's go. I don't care if this takes the rest of the day. I want to get you this deer. And so we started out, and we made a big loop around to get the wind in our face. And as we were coming up, it kind of worked out perfect where the wind was going. We could use the knoll to hide ourselves and yet kind of keep the deer where we thought he was going to be. It was just not a real steep knoll, but it was a gradual knoll that was short. It wasn't real big. And we got up to the top, and I'm looking and looking and looking and looking. I can't find this deer. And we pushed the envelope to where I thought, okay, there's no chance, there's no way we didn't blow this deer out of here. But I come over to last knoll, and I seen Rack sticking up out of the sagebrush. I spotted him before he spotted me. And I looked back, Grandpa, and I knew right off the get-go it was a different buck. He wasn't as big. He was a 3x3. He had both G2s were split, but he had nothing up front. And I got my grandpa up close, and I told him, I says, we're going to have to sneak around this rock. Our wind was just off, just a little bit. And I knew once we went around this rock, and I got Grandpa in a prone position to lay down with his 270, I says, as soon as we get laid down and set up, I says, this deer is going to stand up. He's going to turn around, look at his broadside, and you're going to have to make your decision. And that's exactly what happened. It was almost too quick, actually. He got set up, and all of a sudden the deer stood up, turned broadside, looked right at us, and he elected to pass on the deer. And we stayed up there about another hour, just looking and looking, trying to find this buck that we had seen from the truck. And he vanished. I didn't bump him because there were so many deer right there with that buck that was laid there. We never bumped the deer, but he vanished. I have no idea where this deer went, but he completely disappeared. And after a while, we ended up going back to the truck, and we were actually on our way back to the ranch house to go get a bite to eat for lunch. And I spotted this rack sticking up out of the sagebrush on top of a hill. I said, Slade, wait, Slade, get on the brakes. And we stopped, and I looked, and Grandpa said, yeah, that one's good enough for me. So he jumped out, and he walked over, got off the freaking road, laid down, and dropped the thing right in his tracks as soon as he stood up.
Nice.
So it's just kind of funny. We just did a 2.5 mile, 3.5 hour stalk on this one deer, and we go back to the ranch house, and we pass a nice one on the side of the road, and he whacks it.
That's awesome.
And that's what the other guy did too. Mike there, he whacked one, and when we went by the deer, we could see the deer, but they were on the wrong side of the road and off the property, and we went into town to go get a few things. And when we come back, we're just joking around, saying, "Oh yeah, be nice if that deer jumped the road or jumped the fence, come across the road, and was laying up 100 yards off the road with all 20 does he had." And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. We come by that, now they're gone, and I turn and look over on the other side where we can hunt, and it's like, whoa, stop, he's right there. So slammed on our brakes, and he jumped out, and mule deer stop and look at you a little longer than a whitetail will, and he let him walk off the road enough, and he popped him, and he got his biggest mule deer right off the side of the road as well. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's such a different world out there, especially hunting on some of those I've never been on a ranch like that, but you can't wrap your head around it because it's not the way that we hunt around here. You really, there's people that do it illegally, but it's not. You just can't understand the way that you talk about a buck being with 20 does. Like they act more like herd animals than they do, especially in some of that ranch land. It's not anything like we're used to around here with whitetails. It's totally different. So that's pretty cool. You guys were able in such a short hunt to be able. It sounds like you're in a pretty target rich environment, and we're able to put 4 deer down in 3 days. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. And so I actually, we were kind of done a little early, and there was a guy that was still coming up from Colorado. He just wanted to shoot a doe. He had cancer real bad in his hip for a while, and he has kind of trouble walking real far distances. But we kind of told him, hey, it's pretty easy hunting up here. You don't have to walk too. I mean, you can. We kind of put a few stalks on just to screw around and test ourselves a little bit. And you got to be willing to adapt out there when you're going to do that, because it is totally different. But he come up and he bought a doe tag, and I bought an extra doe tag, and he was kind of worried about if we're gonna have to walk real far. I turned around, looked at me, I says, "Don't worry." I says, "The hopeful in the morning, the first 15 minutes of driving down the road, we'll see 2 does. We'll jump out on the side of the road, and they're just does. We'll just whack a couple does, and you'll have some meat for your freezer." And it almost happened. We went down the road a little bit. There was 2 does standing out in this little prairie. We got out of the truck. We both shot at the same time. I ended up killing my doe, but he ended up missing. And the doe took off, and I think we only went another 5 minutes down the road, and we found another doe, and he was able to shoot it, and he got some meat for the freezer this year, and he was all excited because it's been years since he's really been able to do any hunting, and with the cancer that he had. So
yeah,
it was cool. It was a blast. Everything, I wouldn't change anything about the trip. It was all around a great time.
Yeah. Absolutely. And for you to go out there and be able to experience that, I know your grandfather is very important to you. So for you to be able to go out and do a hunt like that with him and see him be successful, and for him to be able to see you be successful, I'm sure it was a pretty special trip for you both.
Oh, it was awesome. Like I said, I wouldn't change nothing about it. And yeah, I could have been more picky and waited for bigger deer, but to me, that's not what the trip was about. It was about, having a successful, fun trip with him, and, making sure we all got something. I wanted to be a successful trip, so it really didn't matter to me too much on how big the deer was.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
It was fun.
So what does it take? It's the last thing on that on this hunt, but what does it take to was that an over-the-counter tag that you purchased there, or was that something you had to put in for points for Montana?
We did. It was kind of over the counter. It's just a general buck tag. You got to apply. I think it's in. Applying might be over by now, but I think we applied in early March, and to get a buck tag. But so we went down. That's the over the counter thing. Is we went down to the taxidermist that was right there in town, and we asked her because we wanted to get extra. I wanted to get an extra doe tag, and I asked her, I would like to buy an extra doe tag. And she looks at me. She goes, well, how many do you want? I says, well, what do you mean? I said, how many can I buy? She goes, as deep as your pockets will go.
Oh, wow.
So, so getting a doe tag out there where we were was extremely easy. So, and getting a doe out there was pretty easy.
How much was
that?
How much did that tag run you? Doe tag.
The doe tag was $75, I think, because I paid with a card. I didn't have cash right with me there. And then I believe the buck tag with all the applying and the license and the tag itself, I think was about $650, $700. So
yeah,
it's a little pricey, but it's not horrible. I think I did the whole trip for like under $1,500, and we were gone almost 2 weeks. And
yeah.
That's everything included. Hotels, staying at the ranch, gas, food.
So you guys drove out, right?
Yeah, drove out. Yeah.
Nice.
I don't know if I'm fly. I like to drive out there. You get to see everything. If you want to stop, you can stop, and you can, stop along the way. And driving's a bunch of fun. It takes 3 days to get out there if you do 8 hours a day. But I'd much rather drive. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Stop and see some cool things.
I agree.
You never really see.
I think there's a time for flying. I could see myself flying the next time I go out, only because time is more sensitive now than it has been in the past. And if I can fly out and, have a set day to come home and fly home, I think it'd be a little bit easier on the family here. But, driving the 2 times we've been out, I don't know. There was definitely twists and turns to the driving trip, but we also hammered down and did 24 hours driving nonstop. And, literally the only time the vehicle wasn't moving was to take a pee break and to fill the fuel tank. So, that's pretty hardcore, but, you can make a pretty enjoyable trip out of it doing what you did where, you go, 8 hours a day, you stop, you stay somewhere, you have a nice dinner. It makes it more of a vacation style more than like a freaking wide open cannonball run,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we did that. In 2011, I went on a Wyoming hunt, and some family members that didn't even have a tag went too, and it was fun. We stopped at, we stayed 2 days in Yellowstone. We went to Mount Rushmore, seen Grand Tetons Mountain Range in Wyoming. Just did a lot of stuff that if you flew, otherwise you probably wouldn't do because some of the stuff was so far away. We went to the wind caves. It was a blast. We tented every night out there, and we had beautiful weather. We had rain for 10 minutes on a drive one day going through Ohio, and that was it.
That's awesome.
It was an amazing trip.
Yeah.
And we all killed really nice pronghorn antelope to go with it too. Actually, mine almost made Boone and Crockett. So
that's pretty cool.
It was it was a blast.
All right, last thing I want to talk about was the coyote hunting. So how'd your guys? You have a pretty good crew you run with during the winter here, all throughout the area, running dogs and hunting coyotes. So how was the season this year?
Not too bad. Yeah, we got a big group of guys. They're all great. Every one of them's an excellent hunter. One of my buddies, Jake, I went to school with him, so I know him real well, and it's a great camaraderie. I mean, bust each other's balls a little bit, and but it's a blast. Hearing them dogs work, and it's a good time. 3 years ago we killed 76 coyotes, I think it was. 2 years ago we killed like 86. I think we killed 96 last year. And then this year, the weather we use snow to our advantage to find tracks. If there's no snow, we really don't go. just because you can spend all day looking for coyotes, and you might never, find any of the snow. It gives you the perfect advantage to see when you got one jumped. You jump them out of a brush pile or whatever. So we had, kind of screwy conditions with either wind or we had a lot of ice on the snow this year. So that, that screws with the dogs real bad. I mean, it'll rip their paws to shreds. So you don't want to do that because you can ruin dogs. And just the variations of the weather this year, we didn't really get to go as much as we normally do. We were still able to kill 52 or 53 coyotes this year. And some really good ones. We had a couple of good days where we killed, I think one day we killed 5. A lot of days we killed 1 or 2 and 3. But it's a blast. It's a bunch of great guys that get together. Basically, them guys got excellent dogs. And basically how we do it is, we'll talk night before, figure out a plan if we're going to go down south towards, Arcade, Machias area, or if we're going to stay up here. We even go down to Portville every once in a while. And that's fun hunting down there. It's right there on the PA border. They're Oleam. There's some big old hills up there, and the blocks of woods down there are huge, and they got a ton of coyotes. So that's a bunch of fun. But when we hunt around up here, we kind of congregate in the morning on the telephone, and, we got GPS units that we can run on dogs, and it tells us where the dog is, what the dog's doing, how far he is, what direction he is. It's got a compass on it. We use the Garmin Astro 320s. And we congregate, figure out where we're going to try to look for tracks, and whoever has the best tracks, we drive the roads and look for coyotes crossing the road. And whoever has the best tracks is where we'll start, and then whoever has other tracks is we'll go to them blocks throughout the day. But a lot of guys, will just dump their dogs in right on the tracks, right off the road. We do it a little different. We'll actually man track the coyotes until we get them jumped. So we'll have a couple guys. We'll kind of make a line through the woods through either pinch points or snowmobile trails or gas lines, or and we'll kind of spread out like we're driving deer a little bit and wait for the coyote to come to us, while the guys that come in off the road are following the coyote tracks with the hound. And then once we get the coyote up and out of a brush pile, or jump them up and get them running, we'll turn dogs loose, and the dogs will run them until either he comes through the line or they cross roads. It's a lot of walking most days. I know a couple of days I put on 10, 11 miles just walking myself, and you're in middle of your shin deep snow, so it can be rough some days, and but it's a blast. It is so much fun when you hear them dogs pounding, pounding at you. You see the coyote run across. It's really cool. Yeah. I mean,
you guys, pretty much everybody using shotguns, or some guys using rifles?
Yeah. So, no, there might be one rifle and in a truck with somebody, and the only time that rifle really leaves the truck is if the coyote bays up somewhere, or gets in a brush pile where you don't want to shoot with a shotgun with all the dogs around. We had one coyote this year. We actually shot it with a pistol. She went like 25 feet up into a hollow log. We had to get an axe from the local farmer and chop this coyote out of the log. And as they were chopping the coyote out of the log, they went to stick the pistol down the log to finish the coyote off. And there's a video of it. You can actually see the coyote's mouth come up and try to bite the end of the pistol.
Wow, Jesus, that's crazy.
It's unbelievable. And
it is pretty cool seeing, as soon as season opens here, what is it? It opens right after the end of deer season. Is that what it is?
So coyote season opens up, I think it's like October 15th and runs till like March 25th.
Okay, but you guys don't start running until after deer season's over.
Yeah. We will not run a coyote until after deer season's over. Usually, if there's good snow in between, then we'll run before Christmas. But usually after Christmas, it's coyotes every weekend as long as we can.
Nice, yeah. Because it is fun, because as soon as deer season's over, And I think this year it was the day after deer season was over. It was cold and there was some snow on the ground. And I was driving somewhere around the block, and you know when you guys are out because there's freaking pickup trucks freaking whipping down the roads, and you guys are all wearing your orange and snow camo, and it's like, man, it looks like a good time. So we appreciate you as a community. We appreciate you guys trying to keep the coyote population in order. So everybody's cats and dogs appreciate it.
Yeah, we kill a lot of them, and it's I've tried calling it nighttime before, and really this is the most efficient way. I mean, everybody in the group kind of knows what's going to happen before it even happens, just from experience and just being, just in general, just good hunters. And we work together good. And it's a ton of fun. I mean, it's a blast hearing them dogs pound on the end of the coyote. And, there's several times I've been able to not shoot because the coyote's right in front of the dogs, and you don't want to shoot the dogs. And that's number one reason we don't really use rifles, is because, you don't want to be shooting at the coyote. He's running through the field at 200 yards. I mean, we got 15 guys in the woods with shotguns. There's a pretty good chance we got coyote. He's not getting out of that block.
Right. Yeah,
if he does get out of the block, he's probably not getting out of the next one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was just curious because I figured that wasn't much of a rifle game. That's more of a double-aught buckshot type of situation where you're looking for close shots, and safety's a huge factor there too. So.
Yeah, I mean, I run a Stoger 3500. I use number 4 buck or Hornady heavy magnum coyote BB, and I use a buck kicker choke tube. It's a buckshot choke tube, and it's pretty good out to probably 50 yards at least.
Nice, that's cool.
I'd shoot 60 if there was a wounded coyote, but 50 yards is probably about max.
Yeah. Nice, man. We're touching an hour here, so I figure we'll kind of start wrapping this up, but I'm sure we'll be doing more together, and of course, seeing you around the block and staying in touch as we approach turkey season. I know you're big into turkey too, so I would encourage everybody to head over. Just go ahead. I saw your videos this morning. Was that across the street?
15 longbeards this morning across the street.
Yeah.
I was calling the neighbor to see if I could hunt, and he said I got to wait till after the first week. I guess he's got some guys coming in to see if he can't get a couple, but after the first week, he said you're good to go.
Yeah, I was looking at that. I'm like, holy shit! I figured that was through your spot and scope across the street, and I was like, God damn, there's some big birds in that group.
Oh my God, they were fighting, and it was just crazy. They got me fired. I seen them last night when we went and took the dog for a walk, and I figured they'd be out there strutting this morning. They put on a show this morning, so.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, good luck to you. We'll stay in touch, stay healthy, and we'll definitely. I encourage everybody to go on to Instagram and watch on YouTube as Nick kind of gets more of his stuff up off the ground with Engraved Outdoors, and wish you good luck the rest of the hunting season, or the beginning of turkey season anyway.
Yeah, you too, man. I appreciate it.
No problem, Nick. Thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
You too. Thanks, buddy. See ya.